So we're going to talk a little bit about the pelvic floor today. Beth, why is it important to care for our pelvic floor?
So we all have a pelvic floor, regardless of whether we're male or female. But we do know that quite a high prevalence of women at some point in their life will have problems with the pelvic floor. This can manifest with urinary incontinence, so 1 in 3 women potentially will experience urinary incontinence. 1 in 10 bowel, so fecal or wind incontinence. 1 in 12 pelvic organ prolapse, and 9 in 10 women who've gone through pregnancy may experience some problem with sexual function, certainly in the shorter term. So there's lots of problems that can happen, but we can do lots about it, and our pelvic floor is key to that.
What are the main functions of our pelvic floor?
So our pelvic floor has a number of functions. So first and foremost, it provides support to our pelvic organs. So our pelvic organs are our bladder, uterus and bowel sitting above, so it helps support them. It allows us to empty our bladder and bowel, so which is obviously really important, and it also helps control our bladder and bowel, so stops us being incontinent both from our front and our back passage, and it also plays a role in sexual function as well. And when you have your baby, we need our pelvic floor to also relax in order for the baby to be birthed.
So really important to keep these muscles nice and strong. Are there any guidelines or advice around how to strengthen these muscles?
Yes, there are, and what we know is that pelvic floor muscle training is very well evidenced, so there's really good research to support it. There's some nice guidelines directly around how we train our pelvic floor, and we know that it helps a lot of those problems as well, and that's a big part of what we do in physio. So if we think about a little bit more about our pelvic floor, we know that there are a group of muscles which wrap around our front and our back passage and sit at the floor of our pelvis. We've got our pubic bone at the front, spine at the back, and then hips at the side, and those muscles work collectively. They should be working on their own. We shouldn't have to be switching it on actively, but sometimes that goes awry, and that's why we can experience some problems. They can become weak, but also sometimes they could become overactive and work a little bit too much. We know that if we train those muscles over a period of time, at least 12 weeks, ideally up to 3 times a day, doing isolated pelvic floor exercises, we can really make some improvements to those muscles.
And what if I'm practicing them at home now, as we speak, but I can't feel where the muscles are and I can't feel anything squeezing?
So you want to think about where those muscles are. So they, as I said, wrap around the front and the back passage. So the action is imagining that you're stopping yourself passing wind, so from the back, and then tighten the muscles up almost round to the front as if you're kind of zipping yourself up or stopping yourself passing water. Other cues that can be helpful is imagining those muscles are sort of going up in an elevator, or that you're pulling something into your vagina, and that's the action of those muscles. Now the muscles, part of the muscles are better at endurance and part are better at sudden power. For instance, when we cough or sneeze, we need the pelvic floor to suddenly kick in on its own. So when we train those muscles, we need to do a combination of longer holds and then also quick pulses. So for the longer holds, we start at the back, come round to the front, lift those muscles up, hold for up to a count of about 10 seconds or until you feel some degree of sort of fatigue. Then we relax, and then we repeat that up to about 10 times, again in accordance with whether we feel a degree of effort. And the quick ones, it's exactly the same action, but as much power as we can manage, and then almost immediately letting go. And again, repeating that up to about 10 times. If you're struggling to feel like you're working those muscles, then there are other little tips. So sometimes sitting on a chair, you can feel a bit of feedback from the chair around where your front and your back passage are, and that can be helpful. You can have a little feel inside your vaginal opening yourself with your thumb, and see if you can feel something tensing slightly, and just try and visualize where those muscles are. Try not to tense your tummy too much, your bottom cheeks or your thigh muscles. It's okay if you can feel them a little, but if you're feeling them a lot, then you're perhaps not using those muscles quite as well as you might. And obviously your physio can help you check that you are able to use them.
Thanks, Beth. So I should see some results in sort of 3 to 6 months if I'm exercising regularly. What about if I forget to do the squeezes? Have you got any tips for remembering to do them once I know how to do them?
Yeah, so consistency is the key. As you said, it will take a number of months to have a full effect. The NICE guidelines talk about doing it up to 3 times a day, but just being consistent with it. So even once a day is still going to be really beneficial. If we miss the odd day, don't panic, just get back onto it. It's the longer term that's going to be helpful. There are things like, there's an app called Squeezy, which you can set reminders with, and it has some useful tips on that as well. And also there's, you may want to associate it with another habit because there's good evidence that can help. So it might be like something like brushing your teeth, which you know you're not going to forget, and you do twice a day. If you can associate your pelvic floor exercises with that, you might start to be able to build more of a habit and be more inclined to get into a regular routine with it.
So Beth, is there any advice that you can give for activities that cause a leak, like a cough or lifting something? Is there anything you could do to sort of stop that leak?
So yeah, we recommend something called the NAC. So that is actively switching on your pelvic floor, so doing a pelvic floor squeeze just prior to doing that activity, so lifting or coughing. It can be a bit tricky with something like sneezing. You might not have the sort of time to do that, but that can be helpful. What you're trying to do then is sort of actively retrain that kind of natural reflex we should have in the pelvic floor, and over time that can be a helpful way of improving those symptoms.
Great. And if I get my symptoms better with the exercises, what then? Do I need to keep doing the exercises? Can I stop doing them?
So we would recommend that you carry on pelvic floor training lifelong. You may not need to be doing it quite so diligently 3 times a day, but we would recommend that over the course of your life you continue with that. As we age, we start to lose muscle mass from our early 30s, and then as women we go through perimenopause and menopause, and the effects of less estrogen can be detrimental to the pelvic floor and make these sorts of symptoms more likely. So we can combat that by persisting with the pelvic floor training up to a point. So yeah, just being consistent with it, not having to do it as frequently, but certainly not stopping.
Thank you.